All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for today's program, Breaking Through Self-Doubt, a guide to overcoming imposter syndrome. And Linda, I have somehow managed to lose the introduction. Here it is. Bear with me. So isn't it funny how, despite all our successes and achievements, we still walk into job interviews or networking events and think, I don't belong here. We are the people who have graduated from schools, gained valuable skills, and built impressive resumes, yet we still think maybe I shouldn't apply for that job, maybe I shouldn't ask for that promotion, maybe I don't deserve this opportunity. Imposter syndrome is holding us back. It is just something we have to deal with, or can we overcome it? So, our guest today is a confidence coach, a podcast host, and the author of the book, Delight in the Limelight, Overcome Your Fear of Being Seen and Realize Your Dreams. She cares deeply about this because she experienced imposter syndrome herself. Now she works with corporate leaders, entrepreneurs, business professionals, and teams to overcome imposter syndrome and transform their experience from self-doubt to self-assurance, whether in job interviews, networking events, or daily work interactions. So Linda Ugelow holds a master's degree in expressive therapy and movement studies and has performed internationally for 4 decades with the Women's World Music Group. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, Linda. Libana, as a singer, bassist, percussionist, and principal dancer. And she has a TikTok following of over 150,000 people. That's 149,000 more than the library. Learning how to delight in the limelight, which is also the name of her podcast. So please give a warm virtual welcome to our guest today, Linda Ugelow. So Linda, thanks so much for being here, and you can take it away.
Thank you, Robert. So I'm going to share my screen so we can get going. So I'm going to assume that you can all see this.
We can see it.
Great. So I was thinking about our topic today, imposter syndrome, and it took me back to a moment in a steakhouse bathroom somewhere in the middle of the country. And I had just finished an afternoon show with my Women's World Music Group. And normally we'd grab dinner somewhere. And because I'm an introvert, I always needed a minute to decompress after a show. So I tossed on my jacket, I ran to the restroom, splashed cold water on my face, and it just took in that time to breathe. And I thought, that's okay. That was okay. It went fine. 2 more to go. And as I was thinking this, I heard a woman say, can I touch you? And I thought, can you touch me in the bathroom? Sure. She asked, you're in Libana, right? Yeah, I'm in the group. You're the best. I'm a huge fan. I love to sing. I've loved singing since I was a little girl, but I just sing at home, in the grocery store, at karaoke with my friends. I'm not like you. I'm not a professional. And I said, thank you, but I couldn't actually take it in because I didn't believe the word she said. All it did was highlight the fact that I felt like a fraud. I'm not a professional. I'm not a real singer. I didn't grow up loving to sing. I'd never sing in the grocery store. Karaoke, are you kidding? I'd worry I'd be off pitch or my voice would crack or I'll run out of breath. I don't feel at ease. I don't feel good enough. And I'd rather not let people in on the secret. Well, maybe you've had moments where you felt undeserving, out of place, or not good enough. You look around and you think, everyone else is a real professional. They know what they're doing. They've got it all together. And you've spent years building your expertise, working hard and achieving your career milestones. But then comes the time to put yourself out there, apply for jobs, attend interviews, network with others. And at some point, that feeling of self-doubt sneaks up and taps you on the shoulder and says, excuse me, but you don't know what you're about. Have you ever thought, who am I to apply for this job? Am I qualified? I have to go to this interview. How long till they see right through me? Do I deserve to ask for a higher salary? Perhaps you recognize these doubts and you've started seeking solutions to overcome them. And if you're like me, you turn to Google looking up how to overcome imposter syndrome. And what do you find? Sweetie, everybody feels this way. You're not alone. And it's true. Imposter syndrome impacts people at all levels, from entry level employees to CEOs. And it doesn't just affect job seekers, it affects people from across all industries and all kinds of experiences. Even Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon, admitted he felt like an imposter when he was in a room of artists and creatives. He said, I didn't create anything. All I did was go to the place my boss sent me. Now, there is something nice about knowing you've got company, that you're not alone. But is it really the club you want to belong to forever? What else will you find on Google? Track and measure your successes. Perhaps you've heard of Maya Angelou. She wrote 9 books, hugely successful, made an enormous impact on civil rights. And yet, when writing her 9th book, she said, I still feel like someone's going to find out I'm a fraud. Now, I'm not saying don't track and measure your successes. It's a fine idea, but it may not be the answer to imposter syndrome. Here's my favorite head scratcher. Fake it till you make it. If you fake it to the top and you reach your goal, you may still feel like a fake. Look at Maya Angelou. Besides, you want to stop feeling like a fake. So why would you want to keep faking it? The woman in the bathroom thought I was successful. I probably already had a few hundred performances under my belt, but all I thought was, I'm a really good fake. Look, all of these ideas have merit and they can be argued for, but the mistake we make with this advice is thinking it's going to create a fundamental change in how we feel. And it might for a few, so it's always worth giving them a go. But for most of us, we've got to look deeper. Now, for those of you who have no issue with self-doubt, anxiety, imposter syndrome, that's great. However, take notes, because this talk can help you support your friends and colleagues or family members who might struggle with these feelings. And who knows, maybe you'll discover something valuable to boost your own confidence. Now, for those of you who have been where I've been, who have felt insecure, not belonging, or undeserving at some point, buckle up and let's go. In 2015, I launched a new business. I was going to be an online coach, something I'd never done before. For years, I was a performer. I taught dance improv classes and I grew organic veggies for local restaurants. But this was really new because it was online. And that meant, how are you going to find people online? And guess what the answer was? You got to talk to people online. And so at the time, there was this new thing called Periscope. Periscope let you talk live in real time to people all over the world. It was called live streaming. It was the newest thing. And the advice from everyone was to get on every day and talk about stuff. Every day, be consistent and show up every day. And I thought, okay, well, I'm scared, but I'm going to do it. Even though I'm afraid I'm going to freeze and my heart is racing, I'll #do it scared. I tried something new every day to deal with the fear. Affirmations, meditation, deep breathing, power poses. I did everything I could to manage the fear because I wanted to get my business off the ground, and this was a way to do it. Plus, experience leads to confidence, right? So I kept on going. And that's why I remember being surprised when I was about to start the broadcast about 75 days in. And I thought, what's up with my racing heart? Why am I still feeling this anxiety? I hate the way this feels. I had faked it, but I didn't make it. I didn't die doing those 75 periscopes, and that was a success, but I still felt nervous. I joined a Periscope powerhouse for women, so I wasn't alone. And even though I wasn't alone, it didn't make me feel more comfortable in my skin. And I thought, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I have to give up on this idea of having a business. Or maybe I can do something so this doesn't feel so bad. After all, I have a master's degree in expressive arts therapy, and I've done a ton of self help since the 70s. And with my teaching and performing experiences, maybe I'll find something that will work. So I made this long list of ideas, modalities, and stuff that I like doing. And as I scanned the list, I remember thinking, this is a good list. This looks promising. But before I get rid of this fear, I wonder, what is this fear even about? So I closed my eyes and I asked, whoops, if the fear could talk, what would it say? And what came back was, I'm going to be attacked. A flood of memories came to me. Mom slapping my older sister, Susan, dragging Judith into the bathroom to wash her mouth out with soap. I was upset for them and scared for myself, and I made a solemn promise I'll never do anything to get me punished like that. And I never did get punished by Mom, but I sure did from my sisters. Mom would say, "Why can't you girls be more like Linda? When I ask her to do something, she does it right away." And that was their cue to kick me in the shins and say, "Shut up, stupid." And I realized, wait a second, this fear is not what's going on now. In the hundreds of performances with Labana, no one ever jumped out of the audience and yelled, "Linda, you're a fraud." Not even one unkind comment. No, my anxiety was because of things in the past where I learned it was dangerous to be in the center of attention. The times when I was made fun of or rejected or comfortably put on a pedestal. Some unconscious part of me was afraid of it happening again. Now, this may not be your story, but probably somewhere in there, your fear of applying for a job, sending an email, asking for a promotion, or even attending a networking event is not just imposter syndrome. It's the memory trigger of when dad said, "Don't talk back to your elders," or mom said, "Why an A minus and not an A plus?" I got really curious about this. If it was showing up for me, was it showing up for other people? And if I was going to have this burgeoning coaching business, maybe I needed to figure out how I could heal this. And that's where the idea of the inner freedom framework came from. And that's what we're going to explore today. I designed this inner freedom framework to take us from a place of self doubt to self belief and even delight, because life is too short for things that don't bring us joy. So, this inner freedom framework has three parts: reveal and heal, restore safety, and repattern our habits. And by looking at these three components, we can start to dismantle the imposter syndrome and self doubt that holds us back. By the way, this talk is going to have some interactive moments where I'll ask you to reflect on your experience or invite you to join me in some exercise to jumpstart your journey in overcoming feelings of self doubt and reclaiming your confidence so you can realize your full potential in your career. Let's start with part one: reveal and heal. Reveal the root of your imposter syndrome in order to heal it. Everyone has their own stories. I remember being surprised by the stories I read in Trisha Montalvo Tim's book, Embrace the Power of You. Trisha and I are in a writer's group together, and I invited her on my podcast. And she told me her parents emigrated from El Salvador and Ecuador, and they settled in LA. But they believed in the American dream, and rather than staying in a low-income community with an under-resourced school, they moved the family to the suburbs where they were the only Hispanic family. And because her parents faced so much discrimination in their own lives, they told her, "Don't tell anyone about your background." So over the years, Trisha excelled and had this amazing rise as an attorney for publicly traded and multinational companies. And all the while, no one knew she was Latina. She never spoke about her family. She never mentioned their names. She never talked about their food or traditions. And because the leadership team was all male and none of them so much as mentioned their families, she even hid that she was a mom. No one knew the real Trisha. On the outside, it looked like Trisha had all the trappings of success. On the inside, she felt like an imposter. We all hide parts of ourselves when we fear being judged. Another place that Trisha felt shame was for checking the Hispanic box. She told me affirmative action programs made her question if she belonged in the room, possibly because more than once someone made a comment to her face that she stole someone else's place, that she didn't deserve what she had accomplished. This reminded me of another conversation I had with my client Marit. She wasn't part of an underrepresented group, but she had a similar experience. In third grade, Marit took a test for a gifted kids program. And when she didn't pass, her dad, who was on the school board, got her into the program. She said the program wasn't even anything unusual, if anything more art and games. But one day, when the group of gifted kids were ushered to the special classroom, a boy turned and said, "You're not really supposed to be here. You're just here because of your dad." Now, at the time that Marit and I worked together, she was in a senior leadership position for a company you've all heard of. And yet she continued to believe she didn't really belong or deserve to be in her position. A single comment can make a long-lasting impact for better or for worse. I'll never forget the shock I had sitting across the table from my client, Andrea. She was a strategic advisor for an energy giant, and I assumed that as an advisor, that she must feel bold and competent and powerful in such a position. She has the expertise, the awards, the education, but she said just the opposite. No matter how much progress I make, I still feel like it's all a fluke. I'll never feel good enough, and I'm terrified of judgment to the point that I've gotten panic attacks. And then I can't express myself in meetings. I can't look at people in the eye. I'm afraid they're going to question my qualifications or see me as not knowledgeable. I wanted to shake her and say, "You've gotten all of these awards. You're the expert consultant." But then I realized, oh, it's imposter syndrome. It seemed like everyone in her life told her she was capable, even exemplary, coworkers, her boss, spouse, friends, everyone. Everyone, that is, except her parents. She said, "My parents always expected me to be perfect, and I failed them. They said, 'You're such a bad daughter. You'll never be good enough.' The universe punished us when they gave us you as our kid." Wow. Brutal. The only moment she felt worthy in their eyes was when she came home with a perfect report card where she won an award, and even then their approval only lasted minutes. Then it was back to their critical tirades. No wonder she never felt good enough or the real deal. In spite of how many other people told her she was wonderful, she had a core wound where no matter what she did, she would never be good enough for her mom and dad. And it's not like she didn't try to change it. She worked with heavily credentialed therapists. She continued to feel like a fraud. I hope you get a sense from these stories how your past can impact your self-belief. The good news, though, is that once you identify the root causes, you can learn to let them go. Once Andrea and I uncovered this family story, we used a technique for healing trauma where we tapped on meridian points and made statements using emotional freedom technique. After that, I guided her to envision her younger self and speak to that younger Andrea in a way she needed to hear, a kind of reparenting. I suggested prompts for journal writing, and I created meditations for letting go. And after a couple of months with this inner freedom framework, Andrea's life opened up for her. She felt like a new person, doing things she'd never had the courage to do before, like starting a global kindness movement, becoming an ambassador for Humans First, and rebranding herself as a communications expert, all without feeling like an imposter. That is the power of reveal and heal. So you see, imposter syndrome is not a villain. It's a messenger pointing to things from the past that are asking to be resolved. Everyone has their own stories. What's yours? Did you face negative stereotypes? Did you feel criticized, ridiculed, or rejected? Have you ever been bullied? Had a mean teacher who didn't get you. Had a performance that didn't go well. Felt afraid of making mistakes. Heard messages like, keep your head down. Don't stand out. Silence is golden. Or maybe like me with my sisters, you witnessed the ways other people were mistreated and you made a decision not to let it happen to you. As you go through your memories, you may be tempted to discount what arises. You might remember something and think, oh, that doesn't count. That was nothing. Don't do that. As you heard from these stories, a single negative comment that has stuck in your memory can make a long-lasting impact for better or worse. I'm going to give you a moment to jot down your thoughts. I'd like you to either open a document or find a scrap piece of paper and just for a second, jot down what you may remember from your childhood that could have impacted your confidence. Okay, you can come back to that later. And now what I'd like to do is a simple healing visualization for compassion. And let's stand up because we've been sitting for a little while. And you can just close your eyes and listen to my words. Oh, the camera. So in your mind's eye, see yourself. Let yourself see a child. See their innocence, their vulnerability. And at this moment, they're sad, they're hurt, scared. Maybe they experienced one of the stories that you remembered. Maybe they have tears in their eyes. In your mind's eye, imagine that you kneel down so that you can look into their eyes at their level. Feel the compassion you have for them. Tell them that they're beautiful, worthy, that you love them. Imagine what else you might like to say to them. And then realize that you are looking into a kind of a mirror, and that child is you, and that you too are worthy of love and compassion, understanding, and forgiveness. And if it feels comfortable to you, put your hands on your heart for a moment and just take that in, that you are worthy of love and compassion, understanding, and forgiveness. And when you're ready, open your eyes and you can come back into your seat. So what was that like to do? What observations did you have? If you had a memory, just write yes in the comments. If you felt helped by the visualization, write helpful. Okay. So obviously, you're not going to heal all the wounds of the past in a few minutes, but I hope you see the possibilities that when you take the step to reveal and heal and clear away the stuff in your psychic closet, the negative experiences you had, the messages you absorbed, they fall away and you'll feel lighter, less burdened, more at ease, and more sure of your abilities. And it might be enough to shift you into a new place of confidence out of imposter syndrome. But there is, in fact, more you can do and sometimes need to do, which brings me to part 2 of the Inner Freedom Framework, Restore Safety. Most of us were exposed to an educational system that scrutinized our every move and penalized every mistake. We've been programmed not to break the rules. So it makes sense that as adults, we still worry about messing up, if we made the grade, what other people think. The problem is that criticism activates the fear center in our brain, and it brings out this feeling of shame of not being good enough. Yet, how can you possibly not make mistakes when you're navigating a job market that's constantly changing or starting a new role with responsibilities that stretch your current skills? So, of course, the job search is scary. And this is why the second step, restoring safety, is so important to eliminate our fear. We can't be like anybody else. It demands us to follow our own unique path and leverage our individual strengths. If we're going to take risks, if we're going to navigate the uncertainties of a job search and new career opportunities, we need to feel safe, not just safe in our environment, but also safe in our own heads. So, back in the 90s, I performed a series of solo improvisational sound and movement events. I'd come up with 5 or 6 improv structures for each performance, and it was fun to play with my ideas. I was a teacher at Launchie School of Music in Cambridge, and I had a ready audience. And the first performance went great. And after the second performance, I began to muse about a third. And I shared one idea with my boyfriend at the time that I was so psyched about. It was the catalog era. Do you remember that? How everyone was inundated with catalogs like it was Halloween candy? I had this fun idea to come out on stage with 2 paper bags full of catalogs, dump them on the stage floor, and take it from there. And my boyfriend said, "That doesn't sound very interesting." 5 words. Those 5 words put out my flame. I never did that next improvisational concert that year, the next year, or ever. When we're in creation mode, particularly, or expressing ourselves, we need encouragement, not criticism. We need to feel confident enough about our ideas so we can take those risks that need to be taken. What we need to do is create safe spaces, places where we know we're not going to get criticized, where we can be in process and creation mode, where it's not just okay to be rough, it's celebrated to be rough. Imagine this scenario. You're sharing your idea or career goals with your mentor or a potential employer or a close friend, and they say, "I'm not sure how that's going to work. I haven't seen that before. I don't know if people will go for that." How would you feel after that? I know I would feel deflated. Now imagine this scenario going a different way. You're sharing your idea or career goals with your mentor, potential employee, or a close friend, and they say, "I love that idea. What I love about it is I can see how it can lead to X, Y, or Z." Or, "Wow, I love that word you use there. That's a powerful word." Or, "I love the passion you have about this. Tell me more." How would you feel after that response? Which one would you rather have? Now, we can't demand that others create these safe spaces for us, but we can help create those safe spaces ourselves for others. And in doing so, widen the potential for us being included. So, how do we create these safe spaces? How do we do that when our model is the red pen? Well, we do it by affirming, by giving positive reflections. What is strong? What's curious? What's compelling? Or just interesting? Mirror back the goodness that you see, no matter how small, and do it with specifics and enthusiasm. Spend time igniting other people's fire. Be the person that says, "I love what you said here. This feels strong. I don't know where this is going, but it seems really exciting." Do this with your colleagues, your network connections, even with your family and friends. To There's a phrase that Howard Glasser talked about in his book, Transforming the Difficult Child, that when you help others feel great about themselves, they act out greatness. So be the creator of safe spaces and help others find their comfort zone, because that's where the magic happens. And one of the byproducts of finding the positive in others is that you learn to use these positive reflections towards yourself as well. And that is a good thing because, let's be honest, although we worry about what others think of us, we can be our own harshest critic. My client Sumit was the CEO of a tech company and had to present monthly. He always memorized his script and he practiced over and over and over. And even so, his heart rate would go through the roof. We did some reveal and heal, and he told me he's always been in his head. So I said, well, let's look at the thoughts that you've got in your head. It turned out he was right. There were plenty, and they sounded something like this. You're not a good speaker. Look at your partner. He's a natural, so much better than you. You're dull and boring. That was dumb. You messed up. Stop rambling. People are going to see you're nervous. They're going to think you're incompetent. It's harsh, but it gets worse because he'd have these thoughts right before speaking and he'd psych himself out. Now, let's say you had a colleague who said these things to you right before you were going to speak. Would you feel safe around them? Of course not. You might even call this person a bully or toxic. And yet these kinds of judgments go by almost unnoticed in our own heads. Without realizing it, Sumit had created an unsafe environment inside his own head. He had a strict and demanding judge, an inner bully who pounced on and berated him for every perceived imperfection. Without realizing it, you too may be creating an unsafe environment inside your head where you're afraid of your own judgment, which may be why a joint study between the University of Massachusetts and McGill found that when we criticize ourselves, we are less likely to achieve our goals. I'm going to say that again. When we criticize ourselves, we are less likely to achieve our goals. And as job seekers, you can't afford to let that happen. So how do you go to from a place of inner bullying to a place of inner safety? A couple of years ago, I got a book called Big Magic from the famous writer Elizabeth Gilbert. She's the one who wrote Eat, Love, Pray. A huge creator, someone you want to learn from. So I grabbed the book. It's a great book, and I'm reading, and I think I should agree with everything she says because she's Elizabeth Gilbert, right? But I don't agree with her. She was talking about how we need to relegate our inner critic to the backseat of the car. Get its grubby hands off the wheel. Let it be yapping in your ear, but just keep pushing it away. I don't agree because I don't see the inner critic as a villain, but rather a noisy messenger pointing to things that need to be resolved. Here's what I discovered through my investigation. Though the inner critic seems to be against us, it's really for us. It actually wants the same things as us. It wants the best for us. It's just fearful. It's wounded, and it has a lousy way of expressing itself. However, just as we get better in our communication skills with others, we can learn to grow our communication skills with ourselves. We can invite the inner critic to speak with more depth and more wisdom. We can let the voice of the inner critic expand and transform into the voice of a supportive ally. I asked Sumit to consider these questions, and I'm going to ask them of you too. Which do you prefer? Would you prefer to feel worried or to trust? To feel tense or at ease? Blame or understanding? Would you prefer frustration or forgiveness? Criticism or appreciation? Anger or encouragement? Perfection or connection? I imagine it was clear to you what you would choose, and it was clear to Sumit as well. He made a commitment to keep these intentions top of mind, to be encouraging to himself before he spoke. Did it help? Indeed, it did. At our next session, he reported that at his next presentation, he didn't feel nervous or over-rehearsed. It felt fluid. He felt engaged with the audience rather than in his head, thinking about what could have been different. You know, I attended a spiritual workshop some years ago, and there was one main message. No one in your life can be there for you 100% of the time. Not your partner, your colleague, your spouse, friend, friend or mentor. They may really, really want to be there for you 100% of the time, but they simply can't. They have responsibilities to themselves, to other people in their lives. However, there is someone who can be there for you 100% of the time, someone who's on call 24/7, and that person is you. You have the capacity. You have the capacity to be your biggest supporter, your kindest coach, your staunchest advocate. Dedicate yourself to being that person. Okay, so let's review the inner freedom framework. Part 1 is reveal and heal. Part 2 is restore safety. When you're assured of your own inner kindness, encouragement, and understanding, you create an inner comfort zone where it's safe to take more risks. And this gives you the inner freedom to make new choices and to change how you've been into how you want to be, which is what we do in part 3 of the inner freedom framework. Repattern our habits to reshape our experiences. We don't want to stay stuck in the version of ourselves that we've adopted and adapted from traumatic experiences and outdated messages. We want to update ourselves and feel free to move into new ways of being that feel more expansive and satisfying and in alignment. So when we repattern our habits, we create new habits. We create new habits for how we want to feel in our bodies, in our thinking, how we want to feel emotionally and spiritually, how we express ourselves. You get to redesign your experience into the one you want. So the question is, what do you want to feel? What do you want to feel? So I'm going to ask you to write in the chat some things that you would like to feel. Is it confident, organized, bold? What is it? I'm going to look over into the chat and see what you have going on here. How do you want to feel? Confidence, confidence. Energetic and clear. I like this. Confident and joyful. Yes. I'll just wait another second. In control. Like I can persevere. Yes. Calm. Yes. Okay. Well, I have 3 guiding principles for how to repattern your habits. Number 1, whatever you want to practice, whatever you want, practice that. Nothing is too small to practice. And 3, make it interesting. So what are the ways to practice? Well, you can visualize it. You can voice it, speak it, sing it, paint it, journal about it, share about it. Explore it in the way you sit and stand, in the way you breathe and relax, in the way you walk and move, in the way you dance. As an example, I'd like to try some of these things now, just in how you're sitting in your chair. I'm going to call out a word that you wrote in the chat, and I want you to allow that word and the energy and the meaning to change how you are sitting and how you feel inside yourself, just for fun, just for experimentation. Okay, sit with confidence. Sit with energy. Sit with a sense of clarity. What does that feel like inside? Sit with a sense of competence. I'm competent. Sit with a sense of feeling in control. sit with joy. Breathe it in. Breathe it in. Ah, a couple more here I hadn't seen. Sit with a sense of perseverance. I can be persistent. Sit with a sense of calm. What does calm feel like? All right. So I want you to trust that you are already changing the neuro pathways and moving into these things that you desire. When you're clear of the negative burdens of the past, when you find that deep compassion and support within yourself, when you find ways to connect and embody these energies and have the self-expression that you want, you realize you are enough. And that imposter syndrome becomes someone you just used to know. All right. So I'd like to do some Q&A now. While you're thinking of your questions, which you can write in the Q&A, if there's any that have been written in the chat, Robert, maybe you can just glance through that for me. But I will share with you some questions I got recently. So I've just begun speaking about imposter syndrome, and one question I got was, how does imposter syndrome relate to speaking confidence? Because my book is called Delight in the Limelight, about overcoming your fear of speaking. And the reason is because sometimes people do come into my world asking for help with imposter syndrome, and the same tools and techniques that I use to help people overcome their fear of speaking work for imposter syndrome. And the other reason is because the people who haven't come to me for imposter syndrome, many of them have said afterwards, funny thing that working on my speaking confidence has gotten me over my imposter syndrome. And they just had never thought to mention it to me in our coaching work. So let me know what, I don't see any questions yet.
Yeah, Linda, so we have a healthy 60 or so folks on the call, but no one has typed any comments or questions into the chat or the Q&A. I
Okay.
guess they're being shy, but
Okay.
perhaps your presentation was so thorough that oh, okay. I think we might have something.
Can I
Uh,
go back to the slide before repattern? Um, um, I don't know. Let me see. Repattern your habits. I'm not sure exactly. I think was it, what do you want to feel? You will get the slides. I'm going to send the slides to you, Robert, so you can send them back. So send them out to people. So let's just go with that. But what I will say, there are a couple of other questions that come up. Oh, Lydia says, how often should we practice these exercises for them to become effective? I think, Lydia, that if you use them with awareness and self-reflection, that it's possible to get over it in a matter of weeks or a few months. At least when I work with people, it takes anywhere from 3 to 9 sessions for us to, it depends kind of like how much stuff we've got to clean out of our psychic closet. But and how much and how deeply you experience the shame or the embarrassment or this feeling of fraud. For instance, this woman Andrea, whose parents had been really brutal with her, it took longer for someone who feels like um, they've had a couple of experiences that make them feel a little bit uncomfortable. Just clearing away those 1 or 2 experiences can make a huge difference. And I do have a something that I want to offer you as a download. Let me do this now. Put it up. So these are resources that I give away for people who have my book, Delight in the Limelight, but I'm offering them to you because these it has two exercises in it that I think are going to help you. One is something called pacing. It comes from Brain Gym, and it's a way to help you feel more focused and clear and present and calm when you are going into an interview or when you have to speak. And the other resource in it that I think will help you is my demonstration of how to use emotional freedom technique or tapping. So if you have some impacting past experiences or messages you received in the past that you think may be burdening you and getting triggered, that you can utilize that to help your as a model to learn how to do EFT for yourself. So you can scan that and sign up for it. And those are the two main um, resources. I also have like a workbook for people who have my book, but if you don't have my book, you're still welcome to use these resources. I think that they will help you out. Okay, so Melanie says, how do I allow myself to feel I'm doing enough when I have colleagues in the same role who are overachieving, even if not required? Yes, um, I think this requires a self-reflection. No one can live your life for you. It may be that they're heading for burnout, like severe burnout, or it may be that they're self-pacing. But the point is that we all have our own journeys. You have your own unique journey in your life, your own career path, and your own happiness journey, of how you want to design your life to be. If you don't want to like burn the midnight candle, rejoice and honor and love that you are also taking care of yourself and that you have a life outside of work. Unfortunately, there are some positions that you may get pressured to do more. Um, in that case, you may have to, make some hard decision. Do you want to be in that position, or do you want to find another job where you have time to spend with your friends or your kids, go to your kids' games after school? I mean, there's so many parts to our lives, and we all have our own values, and you have to decide what yours are. I hope that's helpful. Nancy says, when self doubt reemerges at a critical time, what techniques can be used in the moment? I like to say we need to practice forgiveness and to be able to forgive ourselves quickly and to be able to encourage ourselves quickly. So I do something almost every night. I call it the 5 things ritual. I think of 5 things that I'm proud of myself for the day, 5 things that I forgive myself for the day. So the 5 things I'm proud of, it could be big things, it could be small things like I made a good meal for lunch, or I did my exercise, or I made that phone call, or I took care of that bill, or I had a good conversation. For the forgiveness, it may be things that I didn't get to on my to-do list, or it could have been wishing that a little like speaking remorse, like I wish I said something at the meeting that I didn't say, or something along the lines. So when you get practice in being encouraging to yourself and in forgiving yourself in that moment, it's a lot easier to say, it's okay, just move on. It's okay, just move on. Have some kind of mantra for yourself that makes it easy. Something that you'll listen to and say, or it could be like, just open your heart, open my heart, open your heart. Or I love you anyway. I love you anyway. Whatever feels like it will work for you, have that in your back pocket. Okay. So, um, I don't see any more questions. I'm just going to take a look in the chat and see if there's anything there. Um, Someone said, I've taken a Toastmasters class, but listening to your presentation makes me realize there's a lot more to insecurity than I admitted. Thank you. I'm really glad you said that. I've had many clients who have either simultaneously been in Toastmasters and they didn't feel like it was helping them get over their fear, or they tried Toastmasters and they felt like it was uncomfortable because they weren't over their fear. And I've also sent clients to Toastmasters after they've gotten over their fear to a particular degree in order to get practice, because it is a very welcoming environment for the most part. I have some issues with their ways of evaluating and grading. I'm not a big red pen person, as you might have uh, gathered from my talk, but I still feel like it has a lot going for it. And for people who don't have a place where they're already putting themselves out, whether it's at interviews or networking, going to Toastmasters can be a great place to practice. So I'm glad you brought that up. So yes, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg is great. One of the things that I particularly like about it, two things. One is nothing is too small to practice, which I also agree with. I love that about him. And the other thing is how to like hook on something you want to do with something that you already do. So for instance, at night, I told you about my 5 things habit. I like to stretch out on the floor before I go to sleep, and while I do that, I take a moment and I go through, okay, 5 things that I want to say I'm proud of for to myself, and 5 things I forgive myself. And then someone else mentioned another book, Super Communicator, which I have heard of and I haven't read, and I am going to look at it now. Okay, Marie says, do you have any info on EFT on my website? I've tried this before. I do not. And you know what? That's a great idea. I think that um I could. I mean, you can go onto YouTube and find a zillion EFT videos, and I think they're pretty good. The problem with them is that they're very general, and I feel that EFT really works best when you're specific. And that's why I recommend to scan to download my book resources that gives you that little demo in EFT. And in my book, I have a whole chapter on there's a chapter on root causes of speaking anxiety or imposter syndrome. They're kind of synonymous. And a whole chapter, chapter 5, on how to clear these away. And I go through in specifics about EFT and how you can use it and organize it. So I've had people learn how to do it just from reading the book. Okay, I think that is that. So, so earlier I told you about that time in the bathroom where the woman was saying all these nice things to me that I couldn't hear. Like, no, I'm not that good. No, I'm not that competent. No, I'm not those things, because I didn't feel that way. But by going through this inner freedom framework, those thoughts no longer pepper my mind. I no longer hear the self-doubt, the family or school stuff, the other people telling me that I didn't belong. And so now when someone says, I love the sound of your voice, I think, I can hear that. I can receive that. Or when someone says, you belong in that room, I think, yeah, I do. And I also deserve to be touched in the bathroom if I want. And this is what happens when you get to the other side of imposter syndrome. So, what does the other side of imposter syndrome look like for you? You meet someone and they say, wow, you've got that job. And you think, yeah, I did. I got it and I deserve it. I believed in myself and I kept showing up. I cleared those things that were holding me back. I become my own staunchest ally and I allow myself the freedom to grow into a more authentic me. How would that feel? How would that feel? That's the journey we're on. Let's go change the world. Thank you.
So, folks, let's give Linda a big virtual round of applause for a wonderful presentation. Feel free to thank her in the chat. Linda, great job. I wish every presenter was as wonderful as you. So, folks, look for an email from me later today with a link to the recording. I'll have a copy of Linda's slides. I will include a feedback survey. Please take 60 seconds and fill that out. Let us know what you thought of today's program, what you'd like to see for future programs. I will pass the results. It's anonymous, and I will pass the results along to Linda in a few days. Yeah, so Linda, you're getting lots and lots of positive comments in the chat. I hope you're seeing those. And
Thank you.
Linda,
Thank you, everyone.
yeah. So great job as usual. And folks, look for that follow-up email later today. So thank you all so much, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their week. Thanks again, Linda.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.